is he has a ticket, he has a ticket, he has a ticket, he has, oh, no, that person doesn't have a ticket. I'll go collect the person from that ticket. And if I can know that and direct my resources to that, I've saved a whole bunch of resources that actually exist in our system that would be doing nothing more than checking what I could otherwise know already. Anyway, 3 ideas for you. If there are ways of getting at that, just to give the final point and just so there's no misunderstanding, there is absolutely no competition between New York and Boston in this regard, other than we don't want to beat them, we want to crush them.
Thank you. I do want to amplify the one point Jay made about accessibility and about representation of our city. This group doesn't really represent our city unless New York's 95% male all of a sudden. I think we should keep that in mind as we're creating applications. SMS is a great way to reach a much more representative swath of our city. A lot of thought should be put into that. There's some really interesting application challenges there. With that, let's go to some questions. We got a hand up here in the front.
Hey, Dan Robinson, working with a company called Rotify in Brooklyn, who's doing real-time bus arrival times with only SMS right now. My question is, what importance do you see in crowdsourcing information, using the riders of the MTA system in gathering this data?
That's one for everybody, so if you've got an idea about how to fill that back, it's not just for Jay. Nick, you might have some insights here.
I mean, I think it's great. I think it's a place to start. You can do that much faster than you can build signs at all the subway stops. You can do that faster than you can rebuild all the internal systems of the subway or the bus. And I'm also not thinking about other types of information that wouldn't be satisfied by that, and I'm not being very creative right now. But yes, I think it's awesome and important and a great place to start.
So there's a lot of things where we might not even need technology. We might just be able to have people report in their data themselves.
Just one more point on crowdsourcing. Besides the operational issues and the benefits of it and the lower cost of the MTA and all those other issues, crowdsourcing has one other important effect, which is it begins to break down the barrier between the institution and the public. It engages them in the participation in the management of and the operating of the transportation system. And one of the biggest problems we have in government generally is a big gap between the institution and the people it serves. And the extent to which we can engage people in that mechanism, I think, has a really important effect in the sense of ownership people have over the system and their sense of commitment to it and ultimately their participation in its governance.
Next question.
Hi, Norman Scherer with History Bus. I take history data and I make it accessible to all the bus routes. Right now I've done the M22, the 103 is next. My son, his favorite art in the subways is when you take the G train over to New York after Myrtle Avenue, you see the animation. With a moving train, it's a natural for animation. I wondered if that's going to happen more, if we can get more entertainment in the subways and maybe in some kind of bus stations, and not only just musical entertainment, but maybe educate the people by getting people to give lectures and make it more educational for the whole MTA and the bus routes and mass transit in general.
I think a lot of these are going to land in your lap, Jay. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
It does appear that way. And we've hit one that I truly have no idea what the answer is. So I think one way of framing that and thinking about that is, I think we've had tremendous success actually bringing music and art and into the subway and into the subway system in a way that frankly I think people have really, really appreciated. I mean, my own observation is that artwork has by and large been protected by communities when it goes in. That the people are happy to have it, that they see it, they like it, and it's really protected by the community, and I think that's very, very important. And I think extending in different ways of being able to do that and different ideas is an important thing to be able to do. Frankly, we're struggling a little bit with the question, I think, in that at the current moment as to whether or not that's a nice to have or essential to have. I think the economic climate, and I can't be apologetic about this because I'm the one who's driving a lot of this for the MTA. The economic climate is really focusing on essential to have as opposed to nice to have. And I think part of what I hope you see out of the ways that I'm discussing the things that are most important to me, at least right now, is I think they're going to fundamental things for what our customer experience is, which I think has to probably be our first priority at the moment. But we shouldn't lose sight of that, and this economy will turn around at some point, and the MTA will have the ability at some point to be able to do things like that.
Could we
Let
get
me
a
just
third-party app for rating the musicians in our subway stops?
Let me just add real quick that I think that the first question is an answer in part to the second question. In other words, it's not something that necessarily the MTA has to do or build or buy itself. In other words, we can use crowdsourcing as a mechanism, particularly if we have some mechanism of broadcasting in or out from the street furniture that we use associated with transit stops, to share information about whether it's history or community or neighborhood or arts or other opportunities that will allow us to build community, not just crowdsource transit data about when my bus or subway is coming, but these are really particularly, these are local hubs around which community exists in Manhattan and in the other boroughs, of course, and we can think about crowdsourcing opportunities, I think, for exactly the kinds of artistic, aesthetic, community building efforts that we want to see, but that maybe in this economic climate we don't want our government institutions to be spending taxpayer dollars on. We should be doing it for ourselves.
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes left. For folks watching on live stream, I am going to watch the MTA Dev hashtag if you have questions that way. One for everybody on the panel. What are the ways we could use our stations and stops and that infrastructure as a framework to hang on other services that have nothing to do with transportation or nothing to do with transport? I mean, we talked about entertainment, maybe obliquely, but what are the other things that, even just as a reference point for the system?
I'll start because I'm holding the mic, and then I'll
Good.
pass it real quick. I think I used to be, and I may still be, the owner of a domain, deliberativebusstop.org. And we
A lot of
have-
competition for that domain?
Don't all run out and buy it now. I bought the domain together with a friend of mine who teaches at ITP here at NYU, because we had the idea when there was a competition for designing street furniture after 9/11 that we would think about how we could use bus stops in particular as a locus for particularly where low-income commuters may be congregating, to use that to deliver civic information. So in the same way that we now have elevators that give us our, sort of quick little news tidbits, or our entertainment, e-news or Entertainment Tonight or whatever it's called, that we might be thinking about using, again, the infrastructure for transit for delivering civic and community information about whether it's politicians, whether it's about the chairman of the MTA, whether it's about neighborhood or community issues. Again, we might think about how to use the infrastructure as a way, as a locus really, and a way to deliver civic information and educational information to people, so to follow on the last point. But again, deliberativebusstop.org.
What about Google Maps? How is it going to get smarter for us?
Mostly, I think what we have at Google is that we often get very general questions, or we're in many parts of the flow of getting information. You go and ask Google at some point. So we have lots of points where we can inject transit information and tell you, for example, that maybe because we know you're going in this place, we might know the bus is late or something like this. But also just telling you, hey, public transport is available in this area. That's maybe not so a problem in New York. We tend to notice
Well, when we
here,
have the
but
right
in
data,
other
won't
ways-
you be able to tell us whether the bus or the train is faster to get to a certain location?
Yes,
something like
for
that?
example. Like one of the things we just recently launched is that if you just type in the name of a business into Google, it gives you a little map of where it is, but also the closest transit station. And that helped quite a bit. Things like this.
Derek, you guys work with a lot of interesting data sets coming out of your work as journalists. Do you find, things like transit locations are places that are used as reference for stories, as hooks where everybody, there's a lot of places where, you're talking about a certain neighborhood. The subway stop was the one place everybody kind of knows as a reference point. Does that seem like there's an opportunity there for you?
Yeah, clearly I'm not a journalist, but I think the more data that we have access to in general makes all our stories richer, and it just enhances everything that we do, especially when we move things online. We're able to actually kind of visualize and tell the story.
What are the other kinds of data you layer over a story right now?
Besides transit, we get data from a whole host of sources, government sources, private data. Just the opening up of this data here is going to be phenomenal as we kind of ingest more and more of it going forward. I think the other thing that's really